You read it right. An ex is an ex for a reason. Are you in a new relationship, a new marriage, and have exes that you're still dealing with? I think most of us do, right? Like if you have kids, if they have kids, there are exes involved. How are those relationships going? How do you manage those? We're going to talk about it. No one likes to, but we are going to. So this is going to be juicy. Get whatever you're drinking. Get whatever you want to smoke. That's on you.
Welcome to You Can't Handle the Truth, the voice first podcast for women over 40 who've outgrown silence, settled energy, and sugar-coated healing. Here, we say what you've been thinking and finally tell the truth your soul's been waiting to hear. I'm your host, Natalie, and every week we unpack healing, holy wisdom, generational rewrites, and grown woman discernment. This isn't your average feel-good podcast. This is where truth turns sacred, softness becomes power, and women rise with clarity. Because sis, if your intuition is speaking, you don't need permission to listen. You're not crazy. You're just finally clear. You've been reading energy longer than they've been playing games.
That's your business. That's not my business. Get whatever you're drinking. Get whatever you're smoking, eating. Curl up on the couch, get a blanket, get comfortable, grab your phone, your laptop, or whatever, and let's chat. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you can be notified anytime I upload a new video, and so we can keep this discussion going. Hit the like button, subscribe. Did I forget something? Oh, and of course, why wouldn't you drop a comment and let me know what you think? Let me know where you stand on this issue today. All right, so let's get into it. An ex is an ex for a reason. And how do you deal with that? How do you manage a situation where maybe an ex is hostile? Maybe an ex is overbearing. You have kids. How do you manage a situation where your spouse is completely not wanting to interact with the ex, but you're trying to keep the peace? How do you keep the peace? See, I believe that just because somebody's an ex is an ex for a reason, which means that you're not going to get back together with them. We're not fraternizing with the ex, but at the same time, when you have kids, you have to be cordial, you have to interact, and it makes life a lot easier if the spouses can get along. Now, you don't have to be best friend with your husband or your wife's ex, but you got to get along, right? Because depending on the situation with the kids, you will have to interact to raise those kids. And, ironically, even as the children get older, we all can see now life is rough out there. And so the kids get older, they go to college, maybe they can't find jobs. And so there's a lot to manage to help them get to a point where they can self-sustain. And if you can't get along with your ex without fighting, first of all, what is that teaching the kids? Right? Are those kids going to get up and they're going to act ugly with other people? They're going to think like this is what relationships are like? Do you know, I'm just going to put it out there. It's my business, but I'm going to put it out there. My husband's ex has been to my house. And I'm always very cordial because I'm like, look, there's kids, we have children involved in the situation. Like, why do we got to be ugly with each other? What is the need? See, it goes to speak to our lack of self-confidence. It goes to speak to competition, right? Especially women, maybe men too. I think men and women. There's a competitive nature that occurs, right? When you have an ex, like who was better? It's not about who was better, because actually, when you've been through a divorce, I think there's a lot of growth that happens. So most likely, and hopefully for most of you, the person that you were in that previous relationship is not the same person that you are now. You have grown. You've taken whatever mistakes, whatever issues occurred in that relationship, whatever incompatibilities that you had, worked on those because I hate to break it to you, but when a relationship breaks up, it's usually, I'm not going to say never, but it's usually not just one person's fault. It takes two to tango. So it takes two to break up. All right. So with that said, sorry, I had to. So with that said, you have to, I had to look up to see if I was actually taping. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not taping. So with all that said, it takes two to tango and two to break up. Whatever happened in your partner's old relationship is really not your business. Whatever happened in your old relationship, your relationship with the ex is not their business. But now that you have come together, you've decided to make it a blended family, especially if there are kids involved, right? Now, if there are no kids involved, then we're having a whole different conversation, right? Because if there are no kids involved, there's no reason for constant communication. So that's a different story, but that still doesn't mean that the person has to be hateful with their ex. Because can you imagine? Listen, if any of you have been married out there for more than like 2 years or 3 years, right? And you spend like 10 years, 15 years with somebody, you guys know each other. You know each other. Now, how you decide to interact with each other after you end the relationship will affect the kids, will affect the children. And even if there are no children, there's a part of you that was part of that relationship. And that's just facts, right? So that's why it's probably easier to just, if you can, get married, don't get divorced, and just be in your relationship and work it out, right? But that doesn't always happen. That's not always the case. So when that's not the case, you know who I saw and I was like, that's pretty cool. I forget, it's Alicia Keys and Swiss, I forget her husband's name. I'm not too familiar with everybody, but I know Alicia Keys. So her husband, Swiss something. Anyway, so her husband, they have a blended family, right? And I believe her husband's ex-wife sometimes will come to the house. I don't know if she comes with her new husband or whatever, and they have gotten along for the sake of the kids. Why not? What is the harm in getting along? And I know she's spoken about this and people find it weird. Like, why is his ex at their house and why is she interacting with them?
Welcome to You Can't Handle the Truth.
Why is she interacting with them? Why? And the why is the kids, and the why is your peace, and the why is because if you're going to have a blended family, or you're going to marry somebody who's been married before, you have to be confident in yourself. Because those two people had a relationship, like it or not. The 15 years doesn't completely get erased because somebody signed some papers and got divorced. They were intimate. They built a life together. They did a lot of things together. Right? Whether some of those things were good or bad, that's their business. That's not your business. But sometimes you end a relationship and you do have to go no contact for different reasons, safety reasons. This is not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about literally getting along for the kids. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. If you've been divorced or separated, and I'm not talking about ex-boyfriend. I'm talking about ex-wife, ex-husband. Unless you got a baby mama or a baby daddy, right? Because then you have to interact with baby mama and baby daddy because they need to be part of the children's life. Do we talk bad about the ex? Do we talk bad about the ex in front of the kids? See, all these things affect the children. Don't think they don't hear. Children hear everything. Children hear everything. I was a child. And my parents got divorced. And believe me, I'm not going to say more, but children hear everything their parents say. And so And that affects the way you think, the way the children think, the way the children interact maybe with the other parents, the way the children view the parents themselves, and also affects the way the children interact in their relationships as they grow older and get into relationships. Personally, my thought is that if you're in a blended family, as long as the ex is not overstepping their boundaries, which now you are in a relationship, you are in a commitment with this person now, right? Because the ex is the ex for a reason. You have to figure out where your boundaries are, right? Where your comfort level is, where your boundaries are, and you set those boundaries. And it's honestly to make things easier. It might be up to you sometimes that's dealing with the ex. You might have to deal with the ex. We always say, oh, we don't have to deal with it. That's your job, deal with it. But that's not true, because you may be the one that has to set some boundaries about how interactions occur, about certain things as far as the ex goes. I mean, now you cannot set boundaries on how your spouse interacts with their ex when it relates to the children. That even equals setting a boundary with yourself, right? That when it comes to certain things and decisions about the children, that maybe unless you're invited into that conversation, that is between your spouse and their ex to decide what they want to do for their children. That's one of the hardest things, I think, in a relationship. This causes a lot of trauma in the new relationships, because maybe you have two people that got together that did things differently. So you're in the relationship and you deal with your kids a certain way, and over here in this past relationship, right, this person with their ex deals with their kids a different way. But now you have a blended family. So if you're not getting along, how are you going to reconcile that? Well, sometimes you're going to have to agree that you don't have a say in you have a say in how these kids interact with you, so to speak, right? Respectful. So there's a boundary there, but you are going to have to hold yourself accountable to some kind of boundary. And I think this causes a lot of stress in relationships, as you know, we're getting into our 50s, and maybe we remarried in our 40s, or maybe we remarried in our late 30s. And so now you're like trying to find yourself, and you have these kids and they're all getting older, and there are all these dynamics that come up about how kids were raised in one household to another household, and maybe you don't agree, and then you're going to have to agree to disagree and step away and still be cordial, respectful with each other, even up to and including maybe, that person is invited into your home at times, right? Because there will be times when you have functions for the kids. Like, what if the kids get married? What happens when the kids get married? Do you show up at the wedding and then you're just not going to talk to each other? I've seen that happen, but I'm like, why? Why does that need to be the case? Because the kids see that. I have a situation like with my ex. I was angry. I was really angry. I probably wouldn't do this today, but I probably wouldn't do this again. But I went to a function and then my son was there, and I didn't want to talk to his dad, and someone tried to take a picture, and I was just like, I'm not taking a picture with him. Like, whatever. I'm not, like, get out of here. And my son, I saw it in his face, like he was devastated, like he was in tears. And I thought to myself, never again. Like, you know what? I'm going to have to work on myself. I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with whatever it is. It's not his fault. It's not my son's fault. It's not the children's fault that you had a relationship that didn't work. It's not their fault. And whether it worked or not, like, you have two people in that relationship that are parents to those children. I think so many times we decide we're going to get separated, we're going to get divorced. We so much forget that the kids are involved. And so much so it's almost like the kids are just like, the kids become some type of like, how do I want to say this? Like, not a commodity, but they become like pawns in the game. The children become pawns in this crazy game of anger that the parents have against each other for whatever reason. Because show me a divorce that's been amicable and friendly, please. If it was, the lawyers wouldn't be making so much money out there. So generally divorces are not, and I'm not saying that they can't be, but usually there's a rift. There's custody battles. There's child support issues, visitation rights. Who does this? How are we going to raise the kids? And then there becomes a lot of dysfunction that occurs. And so that's when I realized. I went to that event and I was just like, I went to my son's event and I did that because I was angry and I was just like, no, I don't have to do anything. And here's the thing. You have to. Yeah, you have to. You need to get your mind right. You need to check your emotions about the situation and remember that those kids didn't ask to be in the situation. And what really is best for the kids in the situation. I'm not saying you have to stay in the situation yourself, but like, what is best for the kids in this situation? And so in my mind, anytime we have to when it comes to dealing with an ex, it needs to always be what is best for the kids in the situation. Now, if that ex is coming in and they are disrupting your relationship, that's a whole other conversation on a whole other level. And that's a conversation that you need to have with your spouse, that they like, look, this is a boundary here. And if that boundary can't be met, then we need to have a discussion. But hopefully these are discussions that you're having before you get married, because obviously, going into the relationship that you're going into a blended family. And I think a lot of us don't, a lot of women, a lot of men, we think like, oh, like we got divorced, so that relationship is over. And then we get into a new relationship and we just find like there's complete chaos about how we're going to manage the relationships with the exes that we still have to deal with. Because you still got to deal with them. And how is that going to impact the kids? How are we going to manage those relationships so that the kids are impacted the least amount possible? Parents get divorced and then you'll have like one parent just decide, well, fine, I'll just disappear. Like, is that what's best for the kids? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's best for the kids. Or the parents are bickering with each other. The exes are bickering with each other about how bad like each person is. Like, and so it's so dysfunctional. And I think that at this point in time, listen, ladies, we are out here stepping into being authentically us. And if you're being authentically you, that means that you're stepping into a new level of confidence. Your confidence should be unshakable as far as the ex goes. And if it's not unshakable, if there's something that's not unshakable about your relationship and the ex, then maybe you don't need to be getting married or into that new relationship yet, because maybe there's some things that need to be worked out. So I was reading something where they said that when you have an ex, it's like you're still like they're still together. Like, how do you separate? How do you separate yourself, completely separate yourself from when you have children? It's very unnerving. Right? Because you still have to interact. And when you interact, I mean, it's not because you got divorced, the memories didn't go away. Maybe your feelings about those things that happen, right, are different now. Maybe you've healed through some of them, like the bad times, but after that, maybe you'll think about like, oh yeah, like we had some good times together, right? Like, so is that terrible that somebody could think like, hey, yeah, we had some good times. We did this thing together. We did that thing. And then you have to realize like, that's no shade to you, right? That's no shade to you. Like if you have an ex, right? Like that's no shade to your new spouse. That yeah, you have you did those things. Like you're no longer in love with that person, but you could be amicable. You don't wish them harm. You actually wish them well. And you really wish them well because you should wish them well because you want them to be around to help with the children. And that's the other thing. So in this world that we live in, we see so many parents, like they get divorced and they're like, I could do it all by myself. I don't need that man. I don't need that woman. Yeah, you do. Everybody's needed. It took two of you to create those children. So so you are both needed in the lives of those children, and kids are affected by their parents not being together. They're affected by their parents being mean to each other and separating and leaving and sometimes abandoning the children. And so this is not the way to be. And so when you do have a chance, this is how I see it anyway. This is my thought. These are my thoughts, right? I'm not telling you that this is what you need to think. You could drop me a comment and let me know what you think about this situation. But my thoughts are, the more I can use my emotional intelligence and my emotional maturity to make the best of the situation for everybody, including the children, the better my life and my relationship will be. So I know this is hard, and sometimes we forget that how hard that is when we go into a relationship with somebody that has children already, right? We think, oh, it's going to be easy. They're just kids. No, like you have a whole dynamic. You have a whole other family on the other side that you have to deal with. Those kids have another mother, have a mom, have a dad, and then that dad or mom has a whole other family. There's a whole other dynamic to deal with. And when you get married to your person that has children, you have literally said that you're taking on responsibility for those kids. And if you choose not to, then you shouldn't do it. I think you shouldn't do it. Because you can't do it and expect your husband or your wife now to just create a situation that's not going to be healthy for the children. Because you're not happy about interactions with the ex. And so sometimes it's crazy, but when you make certain decisions, you got to make those decisions with the knowledge that you're going to have to compromise. Now, you don't have to compromise on your values about what you think your relationship should look like, but you have to compromise about how interactions go and have discussions around how interactions go with the ex to make it the best possible outcome for the children. Anyhow, drop me a comment. Let me know what you think about this episode, because I know a lot of us in our 50s are probably dealing with this, and we're dealing with menopause, and we're dealing with a lot of other things, finding ourselves, healing ourselves, and then we're dealing with, we're dealing with exes and things like that. And so we need to stay grounded, get to that meditative space so that we can be emotionally intelligent in our interactions with those people that we have to deal with, especially when it comes to exes. All right, so thank you for joining me on You Can't Handle the Truth. My name is Natalie. Hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.